A grandmother, two greedy grandchildren, one nurse who prayed with her. Greed or compassion? Blood or kindness? Hi, I'm Alec. I'm a psychologist with 20 years of experience and I hold a degree in this work. And what are you about to hear is a real story, anonymous, personal, the kind someone told me in this office. I changed the names, the details, the locations, but I didn't change the pain and I didn't change the truth. Like this video if you believe that silence kills more often than mistakes do, and subscribe because the next story is already waiting outside the door. Let's begin. Some people spend their whole lives collecting things. Houses, savings, memories, photographs. They believe these things will pass to the people they love. They believe blood means something. They believe family will be there at the end, and the end comes. And the family is not there. The family is at a real estate agent's office. The family is calculation square footage. The family has already spent the money in their minds before the body is called. Margaret learned this at 83. She learned it in a hospice bed, wearing a hospital gown, waiting her two grandchildren argue about who would pay for her funeral. Not because they cared, because they wanted to deduct it from the sale on her house. Margaret had raised those grandchildren after their mother died of cancer, after their father disappeared into a bottle and then into a different state. Margaret took them in. She cooked their meals, paid for their braces, cried at their high school graduations, gave them down payments for their first apartments. She thought they loved her. She was wrong. They loved her house. Margaret's health declined slowly at first, then fast. A fall in the kitchen, a broken hip, a diagnosis of congestive heart failure. She couldn't live alone anymore. Her doctor said she needed round-the-clock care. Her grandchildren, Jason and Brittany, had a solution, a hospice facility. Not because hospice was the right medical choice, because Margaret's house was worth $700,000, and they couldn't sell it while she was still living in it. They told her it was temporary, just until you get stronger, Grandma. They told her the facility was beautiful. They told her they would visit every day. Margaret believed them. She was 83. She wanted to believe. Jason drove her to the hospice himself. He packed one suitcase. He left behind her wedding photo, her collection of porcelain angels, her Bible with the cracked leather cover. He said he would bring the rest later. Later never came. Brittany signed the admission papers, listed herself at the emergency contact. She did not list her phone number, she listed her office number. Her assistant screened calls. The hospice staff noticed. They always notice. The facility was called Serenity Hills, a clean name for a clean building. White walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of bleach and boiled vegetables. It wasn't cruel, it wasn't abusive, it was just empty. The kind of empty that happens when people are waiting to die and no one comes to watch. Margaret had a private room, a window that faced a parking lot, a bed that raised and lowered, a cold bottom she didn't like to press because she didn't want to be a burden. She had been there 3 weeks when her grandchildren stopped visiting. Jason came twice, sat in the plastic chair for 11 minutes, checked his phone the whole time, promised to come back. Did not. Brittany came once, brought a fruit basket from the grocery store, took a selfie with Margaret for Instagram, caption, "Visiting Grandma, so blessed." She never came again. Margaret stopped eating, not because she wasn't hungry, because she was lonely. There is a specific kind of hunger that food can't touch. It is the hunger for a hand to hold, a voice that knows your name, a person who sits in the room without looking at the clock. Nina was 42, originally from the Philippines, a nurse for 16 years. She had worked in cancer wards, emergency rooms, and finally hospice. She chose hospice because she was tired of saving lives. She wanted to hold hands at the end. She said it felt more honest. Nina was assigned to Margaret on a Tuesday. She walked into the room, saw the untouched fruit basket, saw the window facing the parking lot, saw the old woman staring at the ceiling. Nina pulled up a chair, sat down, didn't check her phone, did not introduce herself with a rehearsed speech. She just sat. After 3 minutes, Margaret turned her head. "Are you my nurse?" "I'm Nina. I'll be with you until the end." Margaret started crying, not loudly, just tears running down her cheeks into the pillowcase. Nina did not tell her to stop. She did not say, "It's okay." She just held her hand. That was the beginning. Nina learned Margaret's story piece by piece, over meals, over bed baths, over the long afternoons when no one visited. Margaret talked about her husband, Harold, who died in 1998, about her daughter, Rebecca, who died in 2005, about the grandchildren she raised and the grandchildren who abounded her. She did not say it with anger. She said it with confusion, like someone who had followed all the rules and still lost the game. Nina listened. That was her gift. Not medical training, not pain management. She just listened. And in a world where no one was listening, that was enough. Margaret asked Nina to pray with her. Not on the first week, not on the second, on the third week after a night of nightmares and shortness of breath. Margaret reached for Nina's hand and said, "Will you pray with me? I don't want to pray alone." Nina was not a religious woman. She believed in something, but she hadn't been to church in years. She didn't know the right words. She said yes anyway. They prayed together every evening after that. Margaret held Nina's hand. Nina closed her eyes. Margaret spoke to God like he was in the room. She thanked him for the day. She asked for forgiveness for her sins. She asked for peace. She asked for someone to remember her after she was gone. Nina didn't speak the prayers. She just squeezed Margaret's hand at the amens. That was her prayer, the squeeze. On the fourth week, Margaret asked Nina to read from the Bible, the correct letter one that Jason had left behind. Nina opened to Psalms. She read aloud. Her accent made the words sound different, older, more serious. Margaret said, "You read like you mean it." Nina said, "I mean it for you." Margaret had signed a will 10 years earlier. The will left everything to Jason and Brittany. Equally, the house, the savings, the investments, everything. She signed it when she was 73, healthy, trusting. She had no reason to believe her grandchildren would become strangers, but Margaret had something her grandchildren didn't know about. A safe deposit box, rented in 1985, Harold had opened it. Margaret kept it after he died. The bank statements went to a P.O. box, not to the house Jason and Brittany had no idea existed. Inside the safe deposit box, 3 things: Harold's life insurance policy worth $250,000, a set of gold coins he had collected over 30 years, valued at approximately $140,000, and a second will signed in 2015, witnessed by a lawyer and a notary, and will that left everything to whoever is caring for me at the time of my death. Margaret had added the will after her friend Eleanor died alone in a nursing home. Eleanor's children had visited once. Then they sold her condo. They did not even keep her photographs. Margaret watched this happen. She decided she would not die alone. She decided she would reward whoever stayed. She never told Jason or Brittany. She wanted to see what they would do. She saw. In the 5th week, Margaret asked Nina to help her find a lawyer. Not a family lawyer, an estate lawyer. Nina made a phone call. A woman named Attorney Chen came to the hospice on Saturday. Margaret met with her for 45 minutes. Nina waited in the hallway. Attorney Chen asked Margaret 3 questions. Do you know what are you doing? Yes. Are you being coerced by anyone? No. Do you understand that this will likely be contested by your grandchildren? Yes. Margaret signed a codicil to a second will. It named Nina as the primary beneficiary. The house, the savings, the insurance policy, the gold coins, everything. Attorney Chen filed the documents that same day. Margaret paid her fee from a checking account Jason didn't know existed. Margaret did not tell Nina what she had done. Nina found out later, much later. Margaret died on a Sunday. Nina was holding her hand. A psalm was open on the bedside table. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Margaret's last word was not Jason or Brittany. It was Nina. She whispered it. Nina leaned close. Margaret said, "Thank you for staying." Then she stopped breathing. Nina cried. Not the professional cry of a nurse who has lost a patient, the real cry of a woman who had lost a grandmother. Because that's what Margaret had become, not a patient, not a case number, a grandmother who held her hand and prayed with her and called her my angel, even though Nina was just doing her job. Nina called Jason. His voicemail was full. She left a message. Your grandmother passed away. I'm sorry for your loss. Jason called back 4 hours later. He did not ask how she died. He did not ask if she suffered. He asked, when can we get into the house? Jason and Brittany arrived at the hospice the next day. They did not come to see Margaret's body. They came to get the death certificate. They needed it to start probate. Nina handed them a folder. The folder contained the death certificate, a list of Margaret's personal effects, and a business card for Attorney Chen. Jason looked at the card. Who is this? Nina said, your grandmother's lawyer. She asked me to give you that. Jason called Attorney Chen that afternoon. Chen informed him that Margaret had executed a valid will in 2015, updated with a codicil in her final weeks. The will left the vast majority of her estate to Nina. Jason laughed, then he stopped laughing. Then he screamed. He said, that nurse manipulated her. She was old. She didn't know what she was doing. Chen said, your grandmother met with me privately. She was alert, oriented, and clear about her wishes. I have video of the entire meeting. You are welcome to view it. Jason hung up. He called Brittany. They hired a lawyer. They contested the will. They claimed undue influence. They claimed Nina had brainwashed their grandmother. They claimed Margaret was senile. They had never visited her in 5 weeks. They had no photos of themselves with her in the hospice. They had no phone records showing calls to her room. They had nothing except their own greed and the assumption that blood would beat kindness in court. They were wrong. The case went to mediation, not trial. Mediation is cheaper. Jason and Brittany were already spending thousands on legal fees. They wanted to settle. They wanted Nina to give them the house. They offered her $50,000 to walk away. Nina said no. They offered her $100,000. She said no. They offered her $200,000. Nina said no. Nina's lawyer, a quiet man named Goldstein, said to Jason's lawyer, "My client is not motivated by money. She is motivated by the fact that you abandoned a dying woman and now you want her house. That is not a legal argument, but this is a moral one. And judges are human." The mediation lasted 8 hours. At the end, Jason and Brittany agreed to a settlement. They received the house. That was all. The house which they had wanted from the beginning. But the house had a mortgage. After paying off the loan and the fees, they walked away with approximately $120,000 each, far less than they had imagined. Nina received everything else: the life insurance policy, the gold coins, the saving account, the investments, total value just under $500,000. Nina didn't celebrate. She cried. Not because she was rich, because she would have traded every dollar for one more evening prayer with Margaret. Nina did not buy a new car. She did not take a vacation. She did not quit her job. She used part of the money to pay off her mother's medical debt in the Philippines. She used part to start a small scholarship fund at the hospice, a fund that pays for flowers, music therapy, and chaplain visits for a patient who have no family. She named it the Margaret Fund. She kept the gold coins, not as an investment, as a memory. She keeps them in a small wooden box on her dresser next to a photograph of Margaret. The photograph shows Margaret on her 70th birthday, holding a cake, smiling. Nina found it in Margaret's room after she died. It was the only photograph Jason and Brittany did not take. Nina still works at the hospice. Same shifts, same uniform, same quiet way of sitting in the plastic chair and holding hands. She has been there for 4 years since Margaret died. She has held the hands of 63 patients since then. She prays with the ones who ask. She squeezed hands at the amens. Jason still works at the car dealership. She tells people he was cut off of the will by a greedy nurse. Some people believe him, most don't. His wife left him last year. She said he became bitter. He is 41, he lives well alone. He has not visited Margaret's grave once. Brittany married a real estate agent. They have 2 children. She doesn't talk about Margaret. She deleted the Instagram photo of the fruit basket. Her daughter, age 7, asked her once, "Mommy, who was Grandma Margaret?" Brittany said, "She was my grandmother. She died." Her daughter asked, "Did you love her?" Brittany didn't answer. Nina visits Margaret's grave every month. She brings flowers. Sometimes she brings the Bible with the cracked leather cover. She reads a Psalms. She sits on the grass. She does not pray. She just sits. The way she sat in the plastic chair. The way she sat when no one else would. Nina came to see me not as a patient, as a friend of friend. She wanted to tell me a story. She wanted someone to know that Margaret was not a victim. She was a woman who made a choice, a clear choice, a choice that cost her grandchildren and fortune and gave a stranger a future. Nina said, "People ask me if I feel guilty taking money from blood relatives. I don't, because they were not relatives. They were just people who shared her DNA. Relatives show up, relatives hold hands, relatives pray. They didn't do any of those things. I did. So I don't feel guilty. I feel grateful. She saw me. No one had ever seen me before." I asked her what she learned from Margaret. She thought for a long time, then she said, "I learned that family is not about blood. Family is about who sits in the plastic chair near you. My mother is in the Philippines. I haven't seen her in 6 years, but I call her every Sunday, because Margaret taught me that phone calls are not obligations, they are prayers. And you don't skip prayers." She stood up. She hugged me. She left. I sat in my office for a long time after she left. I thought about Jason and Brittany. I thought about the house they wanted. I thought about the gold coins they never knew existed. I thought about the fruit basket that sat untouched until Nina threw it away. Then I thought about the plastic chair, the one Nina pulled up to Margaret's bed, the one she sat in 4-5 weeks, the one she never complained about, even though it was uncomfortable and the wheels were broken and the armset had a crack. That chair is still at Serenity Hills. A new patient sits in it now. A new nurse holds a different hand. The chair does not care who sits there, but Margaret would have cared. She would have wanted the chair to be occupied by someone, anyone, because an empty chair is a promise broken, and Margaret had enough of those. Here is my question. Jason and Brittany abounded their grandmother. They visited once or twice. They left her to die among strangers. They assumed blood would protect their inheritance. Nina held her hand. Nina prayed with her. Nina stayed. And Margaret rewarded her. Was Nina a compassionate nurse who earned everything she received? Or did she cross a boundary by accepting money from a vulnerable patient? Were Jason and Brittany greedy monsters who got what they deserved? Or were they ordinary people who made a terrible miscalculation about what Margaret would tolerate? Nina asked me once, "Alec, what happens to a person when they realize that being family means nothing if you don't act like one?" I told her the one truth. They either spend their lives pretending they did nothing wrong, or they spend their lives sitting in the plastic chair hoping someone will sit next to them at the end. Now I'm asking you, what would you have done in Nina's position? Should she have refused the inheritance? Did Margaret have the right to disinherit her grandchildren? And what does it truly mean to be family when the plastic chair is empty? Type it in the comment. And if you want to hear more stories of people trying to put themselves back together after breaking everything, hit subscribe, because this channel is not about easy answers. It's about saving yourself. This is Alex Sessions. See you in the next session.